Good afternoon. Thank you all for attending our webinar this afternoon. I am Joshua McLeod with the Community Foundation of Southeast Kansas. I work as the donor relations coordinator for the Community Foundation, and I'm happy to see you all here today. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, though. I'm going to pass it over to the speaker you came to hear from, and that is Chris Calmer. Chris is a dedicated financial advisor, CPA, and CFA charter holder who specializes in crafting personalized investment strategies and portfolio management solutions. Drawing from his experience as former president of both the CFA Society of Kansas City and the Missouri Baptist Foundation, as well as his leadership role at UMB Bank, Chris brings a wealth of expertise to help clients achieve their financial goals. Beyond his professional achievements, Chris and his wife Betsy are active in their church's music and youth programs, and he maintains a strong commitment to community service through various local organizations while enjoying an active lifestyle that includes racquetball, tennis, and pickleball, which I thought were all the same thing. But Chris, I'm going to pass it over to you, and you can teach us all about IRAs, RMDs, and qualified charitable distributions.
Well, very good. I'm going to share my screen here, if that's okay. We'll kind of kick off some of this information that has some interest to individuals that are maybe in the realm of trying to save a little bit of extra taxes too. So I'll give you a little bit of history here as we go, and that should hopefully be a benefit of our time together today. So you just heard my bio there a little bit, so that's just kind of a little narrative. I'll skip that for now, but just so you know, this was introduced about 20 years ago. It was in 2006 when there was an effort to take the required minimum distributions from IRAs and seek ways to schedule those distributions to charities. And at first it was a temporary election, but then it's been there since. And so that's good for those that are looking for this. But some of the requirements that go around this is for it to be a required minimum distribution. In the past, it was 70.5. Now it's actually the required minimum distribution has gone up for those that are just now turning 70.5. Now it's older than that, but you can still do, and I'll abbreviate the QCD at age 70.5. So that age has not actually changed from basically a traditional IRA. However, it is not eligible for simple IRAs or SEP IRAs, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. And then individuals can also make one or more qualified charitable distributions from their IRA up to a total of $100,000 annually. You have to make sure that it's directed to a charity, a nonprofit organization, and it has to be paid directly from the IRA to the qualified charity. You would never want the distribution going from your IRA to you individually and then you sending it on. That would disqualify it in that particular situation. Something new that's happened, or newer, is effective in 2023. There was this Secure 2.0 adjustment that allowed for one-time distributions also from your IRAs to fund charitable gift annuities, charitable remainder unit trusts, and charitable remainder annuity trusts. And just a little bit of background on these three types of instruments. The charitable gift annuity is basically a contract that the donor then receives a life income payment, and then at their death, whatever remains in the annuity goes to the charity. A charitable remainder unit trust is one where, again, it sets up into a trust, another tax ID, and then based upon a percentage at the beginning of each year, that payout would continue and resets at the beginning of each following year. So unlike the gift annuity that it's set up at the beginning and fixed payments for the life of the donor, the charitable remainder unit trust can adjust based upon its investments. If they go up, then those annuity pay or unit trust payments will go up over time. And then you can also set up a charitable remainder annuity trust, a little bit like a gift annuity, but governed by a trust, and would give you a little bit more flexibility and more provisions. The unit trust and the annuity trust are a little bit harder to set up, but just know that there is an option here, which didn't exist whenever this legislation first came out in 2006. And so some nice new options here. And then subject to certain limitations under Secure 2.0, it also provides for an inflation adjustment for the $100,000 qualified charitable distribution limit. So that can adjust over time. Now, one of the benefits here is that it does not reduce the amount that the donor could give to the charity on a full deductible basis. So as an example, you could do your required minimum distributions, have them qualified as a charitable distribution, but then you can still make charitable contributions outside of this to the charity. And sometimes if someone's very charitable and wanted to give and we're bumping up into their limits as what they could give, this is a way that they could maximize those contributions to their charity. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that making a qualified charitable distribution from the IRA, in this particular case, does not give you a charitable deduction by itself. It's just a way to not reflect income and also maintain and receive the benefit of actually having it qualified as part of your required minimum distribution. So I hope that makes sense, but just a couple notes here as what it qualifies for. Now, I thought it might be good to share with you a possible example here as well. And so if we were to look at a particular case, and this, there's a lot of scenarios here, so I'm just running one for you today. But this might be kind of a middle of the road, someone that would be a high candidate for this possible solution. So if we take Mary, she's 74 years old, and she's very charitably minded. Her required minimum distribution for her traditional IRAs, and we're using 2023, and I'm going to use the itemized or standard deduction for 2023 as well. I know that's changed a little bit. But if it was $100,000 in the aggregate, and she makes $300,000 of income from her other sources, and she doesn't need the full amount of her required minimum distribution for her day-to-day living, and she's considering whether or not this would work for her. So here's how this would calculate out. So in this particular scenario, let's say she takes her $300,000 non-IRA income, and she takes $100,000 required minimum distribution. She's not doing the qualified charitable distribution. She's just taking $100,000 out of her IRA. Her gross income now is $400,000, but she gives this $100,000 that came from her IRA. She had to pay it herself. And then she paid that then to a charity. The charity said, "Oh, thanks for the gift. We'll give you a charitable deduction of $100,000, which reduces her taxable income from $400,000 to $300,000. Her tax is $77,795, so almost $78,000. That's scenario one. That's what most people would probably do if they wanted to make a big charitable gift and just take it like they would normally do as far as distribution from the IRA without this possible charitable deduction from the IRA. So the second scenario would be she has her $300,000 of non-IRA income, and after that, she decided to not take out the $100,000 from her IRA. Instead, she took that required minimum distribution and had that go directly to the charity. Then her adjusted gross income is $300,000 because she doesn't have to recognize that $100,000 she took from the IRA. Then she takes her standard deduction, $13,850. So her taxable income is now $286,150. Her total tax is $72,947, which is a savings almost $5,000 in this particular scenario. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, and I know as we're thinking about this through possibly the lens or the partnership with Community Foundation of Southeast Kansas, is that these distributions from the IRAs are not allowed to go into donor advised funds. They're not allowed to go to private non-operating foundations. They're not allowed to go to supporting organizations that are not eligible for this treatment as well. But what they could do, and you might hear a little bit this later, is that you could make required minimum distributions from your IRA that would qualify into agency funds that could be managed by the Community Foundation of Southeast Kansas. So there are areas where this could get there. Again, keeping in mind that they can't go to fund a donor advised funds. We're going to also talk about here in just a minute some of the small pieces of these distributions that in order to qualify, you need to make sure they're done in the right way. So we'll look at a couple of these. Now, there has been some proposals to extend these benefits to include donor advised funds, but they have not been made. And as of today, it doesn't appear that anyone is actively trying to make this change either. So don't hold your breath on this one. It may not happen. And actually, donor advised funds in general at times can come under attack a little bit. So we don't really expect that to happen anytime soon. Maybe that will change. I don't know. But right now, it doesn't look like it will. It doesn't look like it's on the horizon either. Now, before making any charitable gift, it was introduced here at the beginning that I'm a CPA by background as well, but I cannot give you tax advice, and it would be important for you to seek information and expertise from a financial or tax professional before you do any type of distributions from your IRA, and make sure that everything is where it needs to be. And back in the day, I loved the accounting world and I loved what I did from that perspective. I was more in corporate accounting. I wasn't into the tax accounting side as much. However, managed several gift annuities, charitable trusts as well that I mentioned, and then been in the field of helping nonprofits my entire career. So it does make sense what's happening here, but again, seek your tax professional for sure. Now, I want to go through some step-by-steps here before you go through this process, or before you look for whether you're giving consultation to your clients, or whether you're a client and maybe going to a professional as well. Some things to make sure that you are aware of. One is that all IRAs are eligible to make qualified charitable distributions, except for the following. And I mentioned these just briefly, but we'll get into a little more detail here now. One is a simplified employee pension. Two is a salary reduction plan, a SEP, and then also a savings incentive match plan for employees, or simple IRAs. Now, in all of these cases, if the employer is still contributing to these plans, then it is considered ongoing. And so again, that would make those ineligible for these types of distributions. So keep that in mind, because these are out there. Also, note that these qualified charitable distributions may be made from a deceased, I made a typo there, a deceased IRA, or from an inherited IRA, if the beneficiary is at the age of 70 and a half. So although, as I mentioned earlier, the required minimum distribution age has increased for some individuals, this 70 and a half still sticks. So that's still good to know and still available. Distributions taken on or after an IRA client or beneficiary has attained age 70 and a half will meet the age requirement. And then please note that the qualified charitable distributions for inherited IRAs from entities such as trusts or estates, those are not permitted. The check, as it would be written from the IRA, needs to go to the charitable organization. If it doesn't, then it's going to be disqualified. So don't make that mistake. I've had a close personal friend, who did this incorrectly, and they were charged as a result of that. They did not receive that benefit. And then the funds may not be made payable to the client, nor can the client receive any benefit from the charity in exchange for this contribution. So don't make this distribution and then expect maybe a ticket to going to a gala or something like that, or receiving any kind of kickback from that, which typically is something we have to be careful about anyway, related to any kind of charitable giving. And then it doesn't have to be a check. It could also be a wire as well, working with different financial entities. Look and see what your options are. You know, if they do a wire for you, they may have a small fee, but that's probably immaterial. But know that you could do a check or a federal wire from the IRA, depending on who is your consultant, who's managing your IRA for that benefit. And then here at the end, I just wanted to give you my contact information. If you had anything else that you wanted to follow up with me, you've got my email address here. You've got some phone contacts as well. Feel free to reach out to me. We have a great partnership with the Community Foundation of Southeast Kansas. So we love working with them, with their board, with their staff. And so we could also be contacted there as well. I did try to leave some time here at the end for questions. One typical question I think that happens, I'll stop sharing my screen here, that I get from people from time to time is, what is the option within a 401k? And a 401k does not have this ability to do a qualified charitable distribution. However, in a 401k, you could transfer and fund an IRA and then make the qualified charitable distribution from the new IRA that's set up. So there is that workaround. Now, a 401k could still have your required minimum distribution, so you may still have some of that to do, but just know that if you wanted to, and again, these are decisions you would want to make with your financial professional, you could transfer your entire 401k over to an IRA, and then you could make these distributions that way too. So just giving you different scenarios there that might work out. So with that, I'll turn it back and see if you have any questions. I know we went through some information there pretty quickly, so happy to follow through.
Let me jump in. If anyone has any questions, there is a Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you're on phone, you may need to tap the screen to make it show up. But you can type in your questions there, and then we will be able to answer them. And while we are waiting to see if anyone has any questions, I do want to talk with you briefly about an upcoming event at the Community Foundation that is Match Day. And Match Day is a fundraising event that we host to grow our endowed agency funds. The Community Foundation itself is a 501c3 public charity, so we are an eligible recipient of qualified charitable distributions. Of course, you can also give those directly to the charity that you want to benefit. But if you're looking for that extra layer of oversight, or you're looking for a long-term option to support them for many years rather than an immediate infusion of your qualified charitable distribution, you can give those to the Community Foundation for the organization. Match Day will probably have around 40 organization funds participating, and these are all endowments. Each of our affiliates in Columbus, Fort Scott, and Girard have their own rules, so some of those are not endowed, but most of them are agency funds and are eligible to receive qualified charitable distributions. So if you are interested in exploring that option, like Chris said, talk to your financial advisor, but also give us a call so we can make sure that we are getting that information right when you send it our way. So let me stop sharing this. Oh, you can learn more about Match Day by visiting sekmatchday.org, like the screen shows right now. And then let me stop the share. And do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any. So Chris, do you know how are these reported then on like a 1099 or anything back to the taxpayer?
Yeah, so the key here is make sure that there's not a distribution to you as an individual. There would be a reporting from the 1099 that would disclose what has been distributed, but it would be a qualified distribution. I don't know what box number it is necessarily, but there will be a box and a descriptive code next to that. So it should be flagged with the IRS that, okay, this meets that requirement. It's not taxable to the individual.
And of course, we also will provide a gift acknowledgement when you make that contribution.
Yeah,
So you
and it
have
would be
that too.
important too for them to know though that that gift acknowledgement that you give would not be a charitable deduction for them on their other income taxes as well.
Right. Well, if anyone is furiously typing a question, feel free to raise your hand. Okay, I see one raised hand. We can give you permission to talk, and then you can ask your question verbally. So if you will unmute guest, you'll be able to ask your question. Matching funds on match day. I guess I should have mentioned that. Thank you. That was your question. So on match day, we are providing $100,000 in matching funds. That's why it's called match day to the organizations that participate. And I don't have that list yet. We're inviting them today, and we'll have it by early November. But we are providing $100,000 in matching funds, and the way that that match works is on a prorated basis. So if an organization's fund receives 10% of community contributions, they would get 10% of our $100,000 match, which is $10,000. We limit that to 20%. So if anyone were to receive 25% of the community contributions, they wouldn't get 25% of the match. They would only get 20%, which would be $20,000. That way we can make sure to spread it around more. And I'll also mention that the sekmatchday.org, you can visit our Match Day site as well as those for our affiliates, the Columbus Area Community Foundation, Fort Scott Area Community Foundation, and Girard Area Community Foundation. And they have each their own separate match pool and their own separate funds that are participating. And guest is now asking me to say that in general, and this isn't based on past experience, which can be different from year to year, depending on what we receive in community contributions. But in general, the match amount is not dollar for dollar because of the way we prorate it. It's typically between 20 to 30% of the community contributions that we end up able to match. Oh, and well, if there aren't any other questions, Chris, thank you very much for your time. That was very informative. We will upload a copy of this video minus the behind the scenes stuff at the very beginning, which was just a lot of waiting around, to YouTube, and we'll send out that link to all of you. And if you have any questions, send them our way or send them to Chris, and we'll be sure to get them answered.
Sounds good. It was good being with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
All right. Have a good day.
Have a good day, everybody.